outbreeding devices. Majority of flowering plants produce hermaphrodite flowers. Hermaphrodite flowers means if the male and female sex organs are present in the same flower. And pollen grains are likely to come in contact with the stigma of the same flower. Continued self-pollination, that is, self-pollination means the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the same flower of the same plant. It will result in inbreeding depression. Inbreeding means the breeding or the mating to produce offsprings, right? It will produce, this self-pollination will produce inbreeding depression. And flowering plants have developed many devices to discourage self-pollination and to encourage cross-pollination. Why do flowering plants encourage cross-pollination and not self-pollination? Self-pollination will help us to give out, will help the flowers to give out pure breed or pure lines, but cross-pollination will help to create variety. And if they create variety, they will be much better, they will be much stronger, they will have better qualities because they have the characteristics of both the species, that is both the parents, they will be mixed up, so they will have better qualities than the offsprings produced by self-pollination. So flowers, they encourage cross-pollination. And so in order to avoid this inbreeding depression, we have outbreeding devices or outbreeding techniques. The opposite of inbreeding devices is outbreeding devices. Okay, so in our book there are 4 points to note, and we'll just write out the points. In some species, number 1, pollen release and stigma receptivity are not synchronized. That is, for fertilization to happen, we say that the pollen release and the stigma receptivity need to be synchronized because they need to meet each other at the same time, right? But if pollen release and the stigma receptivity are not occurring at the same time, that means inbreeding will not take place. So it's one of the technique to stop inbreeding process, and this is the first outbreeding devices. That is why the pollen release and stigma receptivity are not synchronized, because either the pollen is released before the stigma becomes receptive, or stigma becomes receptive much before the release of pollen. And the second technique, in some other species, the anther and stigma are placed at different positions so that the pollen cannot come in contact with the stigma of the same flower. For example, let's say if you close the door, who's going to come in unless they knock, and unless you go out and open, it will the other person won't be able to enter, right? In the same way, if they are placed at different positions, okay, they are placed at different positions, there is no way that they will meet each other. One is inside, one is outside, there is no way that they can meet each other, right? So this is the second method to stop inbreeding. And the third device to prevent is self-incompatibility. And one thing to notice that both pollen release and stigma receptivity are not synchronized, and the anther and stigma are placed at different positions. Both these devices, the first two devices, will prevent autogamy. That is, autogamy means self-pollination, right? So look, see this one. Since the fertilization won't be able to take place in the same flower, right? It will prevent self-pollination, that is autogamy, the first two techniques. And let's see the third one, self-incompatibility. What is self-incompatibility? We can define it here. Self-incompatibility is a genetic mechanism and prevents self-pollen, that is from the same flower or other flowers of the same plant, to prevent self-pollen from fertilizing the ovules by inhibiting pollen germination or pollen tube growth in the pistil. And the fourth one, Another device to prevent self-pollination is the production of unisexual flowers. What is unisexual? Unisexual means in one body there will be only one gamete, that is either the male or the female. So what are we? We are also unisexual, but in the same way, if only one gamete is present in the body, then we call that as unisexual. And the flowers in which only one gamete, either the male or the female, is present is called as unisexual flowers. So now we have 4 outbreeding devices, right? And if both male and female flowers are present on the same plant, such as castor and maize, they are called as monoecious, right? Mono means one, right? So if they are present on the one plant, okay, if both the male and the female are present and flowers are present in the same plant, we call it as monoecious. And it prevents autogamy but not gatonogamy. Why? Because autogamy means in the same flower in the same plant. Gatonogamy means different flowers but same plant, right? So in plants such as castor and maize, they have both the male and female flowers in the same plant. So it will prevent autogamy but not gatonogamy. In several species such as papaya, male and female flowers are present on different plants. Okay, papaya is very common because if we are unlucky, if you plant papaya, then it will, if it is, for example, if it is for the male, it will not give us any fruit. You will not get a papaya even if you have a papaya tree, in case if the papaya is a male. And if they are in several species such as papaya, right, the male and female flowers are present on different plants, that is, its plant is either male or female, that we call it as dioecious. Why dioecious? Because because the male and the female are not in the same place anymore, so we call this dioecious. And these conditions prevents both autogamy and gatonogamy. Why? Because autogamy means self-pollination, right? So in the plant there is no more male gamete, there is no more female gamete. It will be either only one of them, right? So it will prevent autogamy. And gatonogamy also because it's either the male or the female, so it needs to the pollen grains need to transfer from one plant to another plant. So I will prevent both autogamy and gatonogamy.